Thanks for joining me, Madam Horror, for your bedtime scary stories. If you have a story you would like read on this channel, send it to me at madamhorror1@gmail.com. Hit the like and subscribe buttons, and we'll dive deeper into the unknown. When I was 12, I was sleeping over at my best friend's house in the woods. They lived in a development that was very slowly being built. Lots of dense trees and half-built houses we called skeleton houses. Sometimes we trespassed into the skeleton houses and pretended murders happened there, or that we were hunting ghosts. Early in the night, we had a big pasta dinner with her mom and watched The Lord of the Rings. We were obsessed with it, including with the cast, and we teased each other about our crushes on Legolas and Aragorn. We had a lot of sleepovers like this, and would get so caught up in our little world of fantasy and junk food and just laughing together. Her mom always went to bed super early, so we were left to our own designs. We snuck out, whispering and trying not to laugh too hard. We walked the circle of road with a maple grove in the center. She had no neighbors next to her on any side, and on the far end of the road there were 2 half-built houses. When we got into one of the skeleton houses, we made sure to be extra quiet. We got caught by her dad one time when he was home from his job as a trucker. He could hear our laughter echoing off the walls of the skeleton house through his open window. My best friend and I sat in the middle of a big, empty, walk-in basement and pretended to summon spirits. We both pretended to actually believe it, but we could see the laughter in each other's eyes. And eventually, we did start laughing, but to keep our voices from echoing off the walls, our laughter sounded like panting, hiccups, and hissing. Our laughter died down, but as we caught our breath, the sound of panting continued. My best friend and I were so close we were on the same frequency. We looked at each other at that moment, then straight through the frame that would soon be a window. Amber eyes glowed through the window frame. This was not a low window, but a window for a window well, intended to let light in, but too tall to look out of. The eyes peered through the frame. The 3 of us froze. I recognized a nearly human intelligence in those eyes, and also a frenzied hunger. Then we heard scratching, and the creature began scrambling to get through the window. That's when we saw its snout and jaw, huge and agape, panting and drooling. Its lips pulled back, and it growled so low and menacingly, it vibrated in my bones. We ran, having just enough time to get some distance between us, but we heard its footsteps behind us, each booming step followed by the scratch of claws against the floor. My best friend and I ran out the front door into the night, which was lit by a half moon. I looked back and saw it step onto the front steps on 2 legs. It was like a giant wolf balanced on its back legs. I thought for a moment it was just going to stand there, but then it dropped to all 4s and sprinted after us. My best friend and I barely made it through the front door when she closed it, and the creature slammed into it hard. At this point, we were holding on to each other and crying as it scratched rapidly at the door. We ran into her bedroom, shut the door, and hid in the closet. Eventually, the adrenaline wore off, and I guess we passed out from exhaustion. The next morning, as we sat at the breakfast table, hardly able to speak from shock, her mom went out the front door to get the mail. When she came back in, she had a surprised look on her face, and she wanted to know if we heard any animals outside last night. We said no. I still have this image in my mind of her shaking her head in disbelief and staring at the scratch marks on the open door. I was a foster kid growing up in a small, rural community. I bounced around to half a dozen homes, but ended up staying with one family from middle school until I aged out of the system. Even now, we keep in contact, and they have been a huge support in my life. My room was in the basement of my foster parents' house, not because I was like Harry Potter and shunned down there. They had a bed set up for me in their son's room, who was close to my age, but I really like my privacy down in the musty guest room. One of the perks of my room being down there was that I could sneak out of the steps that led to the big metal doors. I'd push them up and open and sneak out to meet up with my buddies. We mostly hung out in the woods because even if we weren't being sneaky teenagers and drinking or smoking, it was the only place to hang out locally. Sometimes my buddies would bring their girlfriends, and they'd bring their friends, and we'd drink beer around a fire at a camping spot that me and my buddies cleared out. But most of the time we were hanging out sober and doing things like clearing out wood to make that spot. One summer, we were so bored, we all got shovels and just dug a hole in the woods. I know, it sounds stupid, but we were bored teenage boys with so much pent-up energy, we had to get it out some way that wasn't destructive. So, the summer we dug the hole, we went camping one night. Our camp spot was out of sight of the hole, but easily within walking distance, even at night if you had a flashlight. We were just hanging out, and we'd bring our guitars and jam. It got late, and we were putting out the fire and going to sleep when we heard a roar in the distance. But it wasn't just a roar. It had this high-pitched whine at the end, like whatever kind of animal it was hurt. We all froze. Then we heard whimpering like a canine, maybe a coyote, we thought. But my friend, I'll call him Jay, said, "That sounds bigger than a coyote." Well, we all go together to investigate, realizing that an animal probably fell into the hole we were digging. We get to the hole, which was probably about 6 feet deep and 6 feet wide. I shined my flashlight in. The biggest dog I have ever seen was at the bottom. It looked up at us with big eyes that were kinda human-like. It rose onto its back legs, and we could see its front paw was injured. What really freaked us out was that this wolf-like creature's shoulders were like a human's, and its paws didn't stick out in front when it reared back, like a dog's would, but its arms came out the sides like human shoulders. In fact, it looked like it belonged on 2 legs, not 4. We all watched it silently for a moment, and then the creature began to growl and bared its giant white teeth. We ran the hell out of there and even left our stuff at the campsite. We stayed away from the campsite for a few weeks. Then one day, Jay and I went back to see if our tents were destroyed by the elements. We went in the day, thinking that the creature, if it was still stuck in the hole, would have been dead by now. That made me feel horrible. Also, what the hell was it? It was terrifying. The hole was empty when we got there. The creature had definitely been tall enough to crawl out, just its front paw was injured. Over the next few weeks, we all chipped in to refill the hole. We didn't want any other animals, terrifying or otherwise, to fall in the hole. I don't think we ever went camping at that spot again. Last night, I was watching that '70s show reruns, eyes heavy and mind in a daze. I was starting to fall asleep when I awoke to what I thought was a loud thud by the patio door. The chocolate chip cookie I was halfway through slid off my hand, somersaulting down my torso as the noise brought me to an awakening twitch. I turned the kitchen light on, just out of general state of fear, without really any concern about anything being in the kitchen. I checked the back deck from the thump before. That's super weird, I think. Nothing else happens, so I start to relax. I'm not really worried at this point, but a little on edge. I'm a college student, spending the summer at home with my parents, working in downtown DC. They're at the beach, so I'm alone at this rather large house. It's 10:36 p.m. when the door knocks. Seriously, I think. No, again, if I were on the set of a horror movie, or had just been watching something scary for that matter, I would have drawn an immediate connection between the thump noise and the knocking door, usually late at night. But neither of these things applied to me at the moment, so I didn't. I was still kind of anxious about those thumps, but when the door knocked, my attention immediately forgot about the noise that was likely nothing to worry about. Probably a salesperson or a mailman. I remember one time a few years back, a UPS man rang our doorbell at midnight to drop something off. Maybe it was something like that, I thought. Most likely scenario would be my buddy, Frank, who considered coming over but said he was really too tired. He can be a little spacey though sometimes, so I guess he could have changed his mind without telling me. I guess I'd go over there and at least tell whoever the heck it was I like my privacy, unless it's Frank, of course, who I will then remind how spacey he can be. A little weirded out by the situation, though, I grab the first thing resembling a weapon I can get my hands on. It's an old lacrosse stick. I hold it from the head with the shaft facing outward like a lightsaber. As I turn the corner to the foyer, I see through the side window of the door a pair of skinny legs with odd, worn-out slippers. All right, this is weird. That's definitely a skinny chick. Maybe she's confused, trying to visit a friend and knocked on the wrong house. The house next door is about the same size and doesn't really look a lot like mine, but I don't know what else could possibly be at this point. All of this enters my mind in a matter of seconds between my footsteps in the kitchen and the doormat between the front door and the rest of my home. As I stand between the large modern door and whoever the heck is out there, I leave my lacrosse stick on the ground behind me so this stranger won't see it. As my hand floats hesitantly towards the doorknob, I hear a voice coming through the other side of the door. No clear words, just light whispers. I assume someone must be the Sippers girl because I haven't even opened the door yet, and as far as I can tell, this person hasn't even seen that someone is home. Unless maybe she's talking to herself. That was a thought that didn't count to my mind at all. My hands stopped frozen in the air about halfway between my body and the door. I wait for several seconds, disturbed by the odd synchronization between my movements toward the doorknob and the voices outside. I wait longer. No voices. I take a deep breath through my nose and out through my mouth. I open the door about 3/4 way quickly, like a toddler anxious and curious to discover the monster in their closet. I stick the right half of my body out, facing two dark, feminine figures on my front porch. The first thing I notice is those beat-up slippers. I look up from there, my head and neck tilting slightly upward to see the rest of her. Straight black hair, uncombed, matted in different directions. She looks sickly, shaking in the cold, with a hooded sweatshirt and tiny khaki shorts. She's about 5'3" and looks 13 years of age, staring straight forward, which for me, at about 5'9", standing on a raised surface above my lowered porch, is at my pelvis. In the dark, I cannot make out the features on her face, but I got to tell something about her was awkward. The way she stood there, off balance, her neck tilted to the left side like a chewed-up, overused doll. Before I can react in any way, I observe her partner, about a half-foot behind her to the left. A noticeably younger girl, maybe 9 years old, but with about an inch on her older sister, wearing a ragged blue t-shirt, black pants, and rain boots. She had similarly black hair, though she didn't have the same bizarre demeanor as her older sister. I look down at these two girls, and I have no idea how long it has been since I opened the door. Have they said anything? What do I say? This is weird. Can I help you two? I let out, in a tone I typically use to talk to kids, with an undertone of chilling my voice. I stutter somewhat when I'm nervous or excited, and here I could barely make out a word. Hello, sir, please. We're cold and would like to use the phone, the younger one says, her head facing straight forward. Her tone, it was like nothing I'd ever heard. It was feminine, sure, but each word left her mouth fully independent of the one before, like they were just words being spit out of a machine and placed in the correct order by a third party, almost like a robot. She was clearly human, a young girl I'm speaking to, yet somehow very, very far off. She didn't sound her age. She sounded at least 14, maybe 15, but she looked no older than 10. Why did she speak to me and not her older sister? What is going on here? Is her older sister shy, mentally handicapped? Am I dreaming? What does she mean about using my phone? It was like she was speaking off of a script and mixed up her question. I wonder if she meant to ask something else. Not sure how to respond to this arbitrary question, I manage. Well, I'm not sure what you're asking. First, nothing. Just stares, straight forward, directly ahead, as if with no visual awareness. Then the younger one says, Please, sir, we are alone. We need to call home. Let us in. Her response, with the same monotone voice, didn't really answer my question. It was like she was speaking without any concern over what I was saying, just when it was time for her next line. And the last part, let us in, like a command, completely separate from her prior polite and candid questions. Trembling in fear and confused, with a strong sensation telling me something was horribly wrong, I said, Well, I'm sorry, but I can't let you into my house. You'll have to just stay here while I grab a phone and call for you. I couldn't leave these two kids just stranded out here, but I knew something in the pit of my stomach just told me I couldn't let them in. I was scared. The two just looked straight forward, not responding, and suddenly the older one, who has yet to move or say anything, changes her expression completely. She squeezes her fists as they shake at her sides, as if in great pain, and without moving her face or pale neck, makes a smile, showing all of her teeth at once. They were sharp, inhuman, like an animal's. At this I make an obvious, loud scream of terror. The younger one notices my fear and looks at me. Her pale face, her eyes, blackness, pure black, no clear iris or retina, just two black marbles. Then I notice her silent, smiling older sister's black eyes as well. A grotesque nausea fills my stomach, closing in on me, choking me. I'm frozen. I can't manage a scream. I just can't. I'm lost in fear. My entire body speeds up, tingling, numbing, and I lose myself. Finally, after what feels like several minutes, I let out a noise of horror that I don't think I've ever made. I close the door and retreat to the safety of my house. My body is shaking. I stand, crying, trembling in the front door. I need to reach my cell phone, which is in the family room. And I can hear that 70s show in the background, which brings me some relief, but it sounds off now, foreign, almost like another language in my fearful state. I need to call the cops. I know I can't let them in. Get out of here! I yell while banging on the door in an attempt to scare them off. Undiscernible sounds come from the other side, like an animal cries or barks. It doesn't sound like a younger girl. No, it isn't. I know it's the older girl, the silent, mentally off one. But I just can't fathom this. No, I need to reach my cell phone, but I can't move. I can't lose track of them. I can see the slippers in the side window, and I know that she's still there. More animal noises from outside. I scream, yell, bang my lacrosse stick against the door. Anything I can get out of my tired lungs and muscles. I feel like I was being attacked by a grizzly bear. I was in full-on survival mode, doing all I could to scare them away, but any noise I made was matched by the older girl with her disturbing barks and screams that to this day haunt my dreams. Then from the other side of the door, I hear a muffled, "We just want to call our mother," from the younger girl. "Please, we are scared. Let us in. Let us in." The last part, "let us in the same Candace twice over, like a recording. "Please let us in," like a chant. "Let us in. Let us in. Let us in." The younger girl continues, each demand louder and more assertive than the one before, as the older girl's noises match her demands. I wait for any sign of safety, this horrible nightmare coming to an end. I continue screaming at them until finally it stops, and the noises, the chanting, gone. The slippers, gone. I look out my window, sprinting legs, the other girl running the speed of a male track star, but with her legs twisting over each other like a circus freak. I see catching up with her younger sister, who must have given the orders to leave while she stayed for a minute or two, barking, screeching, and yelping like a Neanderthal. Now, watching as her older sister finds her younger sister laying on the other side of the road. They stand there, not looking back at my house, just staring straight ahead, the other way, like they were waiting for something, someone, and suddenly a large figure walks towards them, long legs and arms and lanky inhuman features. This creature, this monster, leads them away into the night. I didn't leave my front door the entire night. I couldn't sleep and barely have sense. Close family, my girlfriend and friends won't believe me. They say they don't think I'm crazy. I feel they don't actually believe. Whatever this is, whatever they are, it's really like they're subhumans trying to take us over. I don't know what this is, but they create the synergy of fear and terror like nothing I've ever experienced. I lay awake at night, terrified when I open my eyes, that this older sister might be outside my window, hanging from a tree, smiling at me, waiting for me to walk outside and leave the house. So I've recently been reading about these so-called black-eyed kids. I admit I was a little scared. I mean, how could you not be after hearing things like this? They only show up if you know about them? But come on. How much could actually be true? Unfortunately, I was wrong. I used to work at a 7-Eleven gas station here in the United States, and the scariest thing that ever happened to me there was also the single most terrifying thing that's ever happened in my entire life. It happened on a particularly quiet night. I was still kind of hungover from going out drinking the night before. Because of that, I wasn't even really paying attention when this one guy entered the store. I heard the door sliding open. I vaguely heard his footsteps as he walked up to the counter. And then right as I was about to lift my head up and ask the man what he wanted, he slammed something down on the counter in front of me. I remember the very first thing I noticed being the sudden red splatter on my t-shirt, which was plain white. The moment his hand impacted the counter, all these little red specks appeared on my shirt. I already recoiled from the shock of having his hand slammed down in front of me, but when I saw what he just slammed down next to the register, I recoiled even further. It was a tongue, like an actual tongue. Even though it was soaked in red, I could recognize the deep ridge running down the middle of it. It sounds like such a cliche when I think about it now, but now I understand what people mean when they say they were frozen in fear. The whole thing was an assault on my senses. The look in the guy's eyes as he stared at me was so calm but intense. His eyes were so wide and unblinking. It was like he didn't have eyelids at all. It was only when he spoke that I actually found the will to move. All he said to me was, "Call 911." I bolted into the back office, locked the door behind me, and immediately called the cops. All the while, I watched the guy on the cameras just standing there at the register. He didn't move at all. He seemed to be looking down, staring at the mess he just left on my counter. Given the gruesome nature of my emergency, there was a police patrol car and 2 cops pulling up outside in just a matter of moments. When they moved to arrest him, he just held his wrists and allowed them to put the handcuffs on him, then let the cops take him away. Once he was safely out of the store, I walked out of the office, trying not to look at what was still on the counter. Then I told the cops everything that happened. Obviously, it wasn't all that much, but as I was talking to them, I noticed more and more police surrounding a car in the parking lot that still had the door open. I went home to decompress. From what I heard, after the guy had gotten into an argument with his wife while driving somewhere, at some point, he just kind of snapped, pulled up into a parking lot, stabbed her to death, and then removed her tongue. For some reason, he picked our 7-Eleven to walk into to slam the tongue he just cut out of her mouth down onto the countertop. As you might imagine, I was allowed to take a little bit of time off of work after that whole thing. Even when I did go back, I was on edge the whole time. For my first couple of shifts, I couldn't seem to shake the image of that bloody tongue lying on the countertop in front of me. The thing I can't seem to shake either is that it wasn't enough for the guy to just stab and kill his own wife. He had to reach into her mouth afterwards and cut out her tongue. What could possibly possess someone to do something so horrifying to someone they love? The guy didn't look like a monster either. All that gave away his distressed mental state was that crazy look in his eyes, the one that had me frozen in fear. I hope you enjoyed tonight's scary stories. If you did, remember to hit the like and subscribe buttons. If you have a story that you would like read on this channel, please send it to me at madamhorror1@gmail.com. Join me next time for more tales of the unknown.